What's up, Giants fans? Welcome back to Giants Latest. Hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things Giants. They officially released their first iteration of the 53-man roster, which is what we're going to talk through today. We're going to go through offense, defense, special teams, and then we are also going to talk about any surprises because I think there were a couple, and then waivers opens up today. So at 12 o'clock noon, the teams can start submitting claims for players. The Giants have the third claim on waivers, which is great. It means they're going to have an opportunity at some good players. So we're going to talk through all of that tomorrow because I'm sure they will be pretty active. And, we'll be talking about all the new players that they signed tomorrow. But first, let's go ahead and talk about the offensive players. I want to briefly start with special teams because there's no surprises. Nothing to be worried about there. Kicker is Graham Gano. Punter is Jamie Gillen. Long snapper Casey Kreiter. Exactly what we expected. Nothing new. Let's move along to the quarterback. So we have Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. In my opinion, there's no surprise here. Running backs, they kept 3. Singletary, Cam Scatterbo, and Tyrone Tracy. Wide receivers. So to me, the wide receivers, I think, is really, really interesting. The tight end and the running backs, we're going to talk through some surprises there on offense when we get there. But let's just run through the list first. So the wide receivers, Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, Malik Neighbors, Gunnar Olszewski, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Darius Slayton. So they kept 6 wide receivers. They ended up keeping 4 tight ends, which is something that we discussed a lot. Would they keep 4 tight ends and 3 running backs, or 4 running backs and 3 tight ends? Would they go 9 offensive linemen and 4 and 4 in both of those categories? But obviously for right now, for the first generation of this, 1.0, they went with 3 running backs and 4 tight ends. So the 4 tight ends are Daniel Bellinger, Thomas Fidone II, Theo Johnson, and Chris Manhertz. And then for the offensive line, they have Jermaine Illuminor, James Hudson, Marcus Bowe, Evan Neal, John Runyon Jr., Austin Schlottman, JMS, Aaron Stinney, Andrew Thomas, and GVR. So for right now, they did keep 10 offensive linemen. So in my opinion, I like the 10 offensive linemen. It's basically what I had. I think when it comes to the O-line, the more the merrier, especially at this stage in the game, because, we're still not 100% sure that Andrew Thomas is going to be ready to go for week 1. So you got to have Marcus Bowe, you got to have James Hudson, you have to have some options there. And I like that also a lot of the guys that they kept have center guard flexibility. So when you're talking about someone like Schlottman and Stinney, even GVR, they all have the flexibility of guard and center, which unfortunately, with all these injuries, it's necessary. The one thing that I wanted to point out with this list on offensive line too is that Joshua Ezeudu, who is dealing with an injury right now, was placed on the injury list. So he still can be moved to the 53 once he's healthy, but as of right now, he's not included in this. And I've seen a lot of questions about Eric Gray too, that where is he? Why is he not on the roster? I'm glad the Giants didn't keep him, whatever. He's on an injury list. So as of right now, he's still a Giant. He just is on that injury list. So because of that, they get exempt from the 53, right? But they're still technically a Giant, which means that until the Giants cut them, they're still on the team and other teams can't come and claim them, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and move through the defense, and then I want to talk through the surprises and some things that I thought were interesting about this list. So the defense, they kept 7 corners, which is 1 more than I had on my prediction. They have Paulson Adebo, Deontay Banks, Corey Black, Cordell Flott, Art Green, Nick Jones, and Drew Phillips. Same thing in regards to the offensive line. Trey Hawkins III, who was dealing with an injury, they actually went ahead and released him, but I know there was some talk about him potentially making the roster with this group, but because of the injury, he was waived. What I think is interesting is they only kept 3 safeties. Now, I had them keeping 4. I think they would like 4 on the roster before the season starts, so I think that this is a position that they will go after in waivers. But what I thought was interesting is that they released Raheem Lane. He was dealing with some sort of injury. So then I thought, oh, Makari Page, he's going to be the 4th safety. And then a couple minutes later, Makari Page was cut. So their 3 safeties are Dane Bell and Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin. There's nothing new there. So, but again, interesting, they only kept 3. So when we talk through waivers, I think that's going to be a position to watch. Outside linebackers, they only kept 3 here, which was also a surprise to me. So they have Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, exactly who you would expect. Now, I thought that between either Trace Ford or Tomon Fox, they would have kept one, if not both of those guys. But the fact that they only kept 3, I wonder where they're leaning towards that, because I feel like they're going to have a 4th before the season starts. It's nice to have the rotation of 3, but if they're all on the field at the same time, like, and God forbid someone gets injured, I don't know, which could lead me to defensive linemen, because they have Chauncey Golston listed as a DL, but he also plays edge rusher, so he also can be used in that capability. So maybe their plan is that he's going to be the 4th edge rusher if they need him, but they have him listed as a defensive lineman. I'm not really sure, but I could see that happening. So for defensive linemen, they kept 6. They have Darius Alexander, DJ Davidson, Chauncey Golston, Dexter Lawrence, Raheem Nunez-Roches, also known as Nacho, and Roy Robertson-Harris. And then lastly, for inside linebackers, they kept 5. Chris Board, Demetrius Flanagan Foles, Micah McFadden, Darius Muasau, and Bobby Okereke. So again, I don't really think there's a ton of surprises here, but I want to go through this little by little and talk through what I thought was interesting. So the quarterbacks, I am surprised that so many people are devastated that Tommy DeVito got cut. Like, I know you didn't think they were going to keep 4 quarterbacks. Come on. So I think he's going to pass through waivers. He's probably going to end up on the practice squad. I don't think there's any concern there. And I think part of it is people are just like sad to see the whole Tommy Cutlets, experience the Linsanity run that he had for, those few games or whatever it was. So I think that's a part of it, and I totally understand it. And I get it. And I'm sure people would say the same thing to me about Turbo, but like, I can be a little rational about this. Like, I love Turbo. I wanted him on the roster. I am upset that he's not on the roster, but I'm not completely surprised. Like, I didn't think that the Giants were going to keep 4 running backs. They haven't done that in the past. I've said before, Dable loves Singletary. I didn't think that they were going to cut Singletary. I would have if I'm them, but I'm not. So obviously we go about things differently. One thing that I did say though to my family group chat, and I'll say it to you guys too, is I think that Dable's allegiance to washed up Bills players is going to be part of his downfall. Like, it's one of the reasons why I'm not so sold on bringing on Gabe Davis. And Gabe Davis has been to a bunch of different teams and no one has signed him. So what does that tell you? So I don't know. I just think the running back room, if you're not keeping 4, I personally think that Turbo brings more to the table than Singletary does, but I'm not the coach. Obviously, I don't see him in practice every day. I know that he is not as good of a blocker as Singletary is. Singletary's a little bit better at picking up the blitz and things like that. I just think when something that you've struggled with as an offense is explosive plays, and you have a running back who's going to be able to create those explosive plays, or at least contribute to them, I think would be helpful. But we do have Scattaboo, we do have Tracy, we do have Neighbors. So, it is what it is. I just would have preferred to see Turbo on the roster. But I wasn't entirely surprised. I didn't expect them to keep 4. Just disappointed. I'm always rooting for Turbo, and I hope he ends up on the practice squad, because if they decide to cut Singletary or God forbid someone gets injured, I want Turbo to be the number 1 guy that is brought up to the roster to play in. So let's move along to the wide receivers. The biggest thing for me here was I was a little surprised that they kept Gunner. And the biggest reason for that being that he missed out on punt returns for an entire year last year. He missed the whole season, obviously. But we saw Amir Smith-Marset make really great plays as a returner. He returned 2 for touchdowns. He has that explosive factor that I don't really think that we've seen from Gunner. And we've also heard the coaching staff speak so highly about Smith-Marset. They brought him in to do the Giants podcast earlier this summer, which they don't usually do. So I don't know. That was a little like head scratcher to me, because while I thought it could go either way, I just kind of thought that they favored Amir Smith-Marset. It's his second year in the system. He knows the offense. I know what I thought was interesting was Dable was asked about Gunner within the last couple days, and he said that he was impressed that he remembered their playbook and like remembered certain plays, even though he didn't play an entire year last year. And I mean, is that impressive? Maybe. I'm also like, he had an entire year to not play football. Like, while you're rehabbing, what else are you doing? Like, yeah, the Giants cut you, but it was like the only other team that he played on. I don't know. It was like, I guess you could say that it's impressive, but like I didn't think it was that impressive. Whatever. I don't mean, who knows. Anyway, let's move along. So that I thought was interesting. Next up is Beau Collins. So obviously we know that the 6th wide receiver spot was going to be someone who has special teams capabilities, whether it was Beau Collins, Montreal Washington, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Dalen Cambry. Dalen Cambry got cut due to an injury, I believe. So Beau Collins, I think, was a good choice here. I thought it was either going to be him or Lil Jordan Humphrey. They ended up cutting Montreal Washington, so we knew it was probably going to be between those guys. I kind of felt like it was a toss-up. I think they both did good things during camp and preseason. Obviously, Beau Collins had that miscommunication and things. Lil Jordan Humphrey had some drops. Like, I'm not surprised that they kept Beau Collins. I also have heard them say something along the lines of, last year when Bryce Ford Wheaton was back, he was that guy on special teams. And I think that kind of looked like Beau Collins, looking at Beau Collins, like he could be the kind of like replacement for Bryce Ford Wheaton this year. So I don't know. I do think that they are probably not done there. I'm still kind of hoping that they bring in OBJ. And I know you guys are all going to be like, oh, you don't want Gabe Davis, but you want OBJ. Listen, I know. I think OBJ and Malik Neighbors, you're not going to tell me that doesn't sound more fun than Gabe Davis and Malik Neighbors? Come on. All right, tight end. So again, I'm not entirely surprised by the way that this shook out. I was thinking that they were more likely to keep 4 tight ends than 4 running backs because Dable loves the tight end position. We know that they brought back Manhurts. They obviously love him. He didn't play in preseason, he didn't play in the last preseason game, and neither did Daniel Bellinger, even though they were healthy, which typically means that those players are safe if they don't play the last game. So that, I think, was kind of leading. I know a lot of people are disappointed that they didn't keep Dulcich. I'm a little bit disappointed too, but I kind of felt like it was a toss-up. It was either going to be him or Fredoni, and, they are more partial to keeping players that they drafted. They kept Corey Black with the cornerbacks, and, they're keeping Fedoni, so I'm not entirely surprised there. I would say Bellinger, I think, is a little more of a surprise, but again, not really because they drafted him, right? Like, it's the same thing with Evan Neal and Jalen Hyatt. All the people who are like, cut Hyatt, cut Neal, I'm done with them. This front office drafted them. In certain instances, they traded up to bring in these players. They are not, in case you have not noticed, they are not willing to admit defeat, and they are stubborn. So it's not surprising to me that they are keeping Daniel Bellinger, even though, he maybe didn't look as good as Dulcich did during preseason. I hope that Dulcich ends up on the practice squad because I would like to see more of him, but that's it. The offensive line, I don't really have any surprises here. I know, again, with the whole Neal thing, but again, he was the 7th overall pick. They finally moved him to guard. They're not cutting him. Okay, let's switch gears to the defense. The only surprise I have on cornerbacks is the fact that they kept 7 instead of 6. They had Corey Black in there, which I honestly forgot about when I was doing the roster prediction here. A 7th round pick. He didn't stand out in camp or preseason, so I kind of just thought he was going to be, a practice squad guy, and maybe he ultimately will be one. Maybe they'll bring in a cornerback on waivers. But so I was a little surprised by that. Thrilled with my guy, Nick Jones. Obviously, he's the backup slot corner behind Drew Phillips. They don't have anyone else who's capable of doing that right now. Maybe that is something they will go after in waivers too, as opposed to going for someone on the outside. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that is going to be an interesting position to watch because we still don't know if it's going to be Banks or Flott also week 1 opposite what's his name? Paulson Adebo. Again, the safety thing, I'm kind of just surprised that they kept 3, so I think there's a possibility they also go after one. I would like to see them bring in Tony Jefferson. I know he's probably going to be a little expensive, but he's a great veteran. I think maybe you could get away with like a semi-cheap 1-year deal, and I think he would be a great addition to someone like Devon Holland and Tyler Nubin. Like, I would love to see him in the rotation with those two. He's got better tackling skills than Dane Belton does. So, I would like that. Outside linebacker, again, I don't think they're going to add anyone here because I think that it's going to be Chauncey Golston that they end up just using in dual positions there, right? Inside linebacker, no surprise here. When I did my 53, I didn't have Flanagan Foles only because I didn't see enough from him during preseason, and he was like the only other guy on the roster. So I'm not sold on him making the 53 by the time the first game rolls around. I don't think he's going to be on this team very long. I think that's a position that they also could look at in waivers. Lastly, defensive lineman. DJ Davidson was the only person I had on here that I thought was a little bit of a surprise. When I did mine, I don't think I had him making the roster, but he is someone who, coming off an injury, has had an excellent preseason, considering he's been very up and down over the last couple of years. He was more consistent than I think he's ever been during preseason. Again, he is a draft pick from this front office, so not entirely surprising. I think the biggest surprise for fans for the defensive line was the fact that they didn't keep Elijah Chapman, especially knowing that they used him on offense too. So I'm curious to see how this all shakes out. Again, when it comes to waivers, I think safety, I think inside linebacker, I think corner, and I think wide receiver could be an option for them. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about all of this tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe for more.